Guys, so I don't think I've ever told this story. There's quite a few stories that I would like to tell, and they're not easy to talk about, these stories. I don't particularly feel scared to talk about them. It's just quite a lot of resistance to speak about these stories. They're really meaningful. And sometimes when I share personal things, I sometimes think I'm not going to share it if people are not really going to value it. I'm going to waste my time. So there's kind of got to be a point to the story. Um, so this is basically about sparring. When I first did sparring and boxing, and I think a lot of you will really appreciate this. You'll really connect with it. I think it will inspire. It's definitely inspired me, and I'm quite confident that it will inspire a lot of you, because if you can be a bit more open-minded, it's not really just about boxing and sparring and fighting. A lot of people will naturally think that. It really goes a lot more deeper than that. It really is about overcoming your fears in your life. So let's get straight into it. I want to beat around the bush, right? So growing up, my whole life, I can't even remember since when, I had anxiety, fear, very nervous, very scared, very frightened of new things, and very frightened of being judged, very frightened of failing. And a lot of my fears, these phobias I had, was because I did fail when I was younger. I did get beaten up, I did get bullied, I did get humiliated, I did get laughed at around my area at school. There was a lot of gangs growing up, there was a lot of bullying. So I went through a lot of that, and I wasn't the only one, right? Pretty much at some point everyone did. Even bullies that bullied me, they got bullied by someone tougher than them. So it's just something that happened growing up. I was always like scared of losing a fight, because obviously my pride, being a man, and it did happen a few times, but eventually, and again, I hope people receive this the right way. I'm not trying to be big-headed or say I'm a tough guy, because I'm not a tough guy, and I don't want to be. I don't want to be in that way. But after a long time of getting bullying, um, I started to have enough of it when I was younger, right? Because it used to just cause me so much pain. I started fighting back, and obviously, my dad taught me the basics of boxing growing up, and he kind of made me do press-ups, push-ups. So I was quite physically strong. Once I got over my fears and stood up for myself, I was a pretty good fighter growing up. I was a good fist fighter. So I started to knock out quite a lot of bullies that would come up, hit me first, start on me. I would knock them out, and then obviously they would stop. So that was quite surprising. It kind of made me surprised, because I never saw myself as a strong person. I always saw myself, for most part, how I felt about myself deep down, I always saw myself as a very weak person, as a coward, as a complete weakling, because of what I went through, and comparing myself to, and bearing in mind, obviously, comparing myself to other kids. I thought, he's stronger than me, he's way more confident than me. I'm too sensitive, I'm too emotional, very scared of hurting people's feelings, very sensitive towards everything. So moving on, I'd got into watching boxing through because of my dad growing up. First fights, my memories were Ben Eubank, Mike Tyson, Steve Collins, Prince Nazim. Then a little bit later on, as I got more, as I watched boxing for Lennox Lewis as well, Frank Bruno. They were the main ones that I can remember. There was, of course, Antonio Barrera, Morales, De La Hoya, and then obviously later on Ricky Hatton, Kawasaki, Mayweather, Pacquiao. So I always loved boxing because of my dad. Watching all the fights. I watched most of the big fights with my dad. De La Hoya against Hopkins, Steve Collins against Chris Eubank, Nigel Benn against Eubank, Collins versus Ben, Tyson versus Bruno, Lewis versus. I watched so many big fights with my dad. Barrera versus Prince Nazim. So I got a love for the sport from a young age, thanks to my dad. And obviously, when you're young, you want to try it. You in your own head you think, oh, I could do that. I want to be a boxer. But obviously, saying I want to be a boxer and doing boxing is two entirely different things. Like anything in life, it's easy to sit there and go, I want to be a champion, I want to be successful, I want to be a public. But when it comes to you doing it, especially being that I was a shy kid who always had an anxiety disorder growing up, I didn't know it was called anxiety at that time. Obviously, I was young. I just always knew that I'm very nervous. I get very anxious, very scared about pretty much anything, right? I was very shy as well around people till I knew them. So I first started watching the Bruce Lee tapes, and then I started doing weights. I didn't do boxing straight away, right? Um, I was there was a boxing club in my area, right? It was kind of weird, but I used to look at the boxers doing it. I always how nervous I was as a kid, right? We had like the Stowe Club. It was called the Stowe Club. So you'd have the boxers that were training. Most of the boxers were Irish travellers at that time. So I would be scared even to walk in. You could walk in and just see them training. Like I would walk in, I remember the smell, and I remember just like feeling, I felt self-conscious. I didn't feel tougher. So I'd kind of like look through the door, get the courage, walk in a little bit, stand for a few seconds, watch them spar, hit the bag, and then walk out, be too nervous. So deep down, I always wanted to do it. I wanted to prove to myself that I was tough, that I could, at least go in the gym and train with boxers to kind of get that self-respect, to kind of get that feeling that I can overcome bullying, right? So it took me many years. I kind of put it off. So when I got to 21, I was hitting a punch bag, not in a boxing gym, in a fitness gym, in a weightlifting gym. And there was a guy, I didn't know who he was. He was older than me. He was working out on the bag. He was amazing. So he came up, I got speaking with him, and he said to me, "You're pretty good, you can punch. Do you do boxing?" I said, "No, I'd like to do it." And he went, "Oh, if you want, I can take you down to my old local amateur club in South London." And I was like, wow, I was so like, wow, I couldn't believe he'll do that for me, because he didn't know me, he didn't have to do anything for me. And this was basically, I'm not going to say his name. I want to say his name, but I'm reluctant. But he's a famous person who was a professional boxer, and he became a journalist who worked for a big company, right? And he interviews all the things. So I didn't even know he was famous. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know he was until he told me, and then I saw him on TV, and I got to know him. And he did a little bit of like show me the pads in the weightlifting gym we went, and then he brought me down to Fitzroy Lodge in Lambeth and introduced me, and the guy changed my life. So I went down to that gym when I was 21, and I'll be honest, guys, underneath, right, I wanted to do the boxing, but I was terrified to do sparring, because sparring for me, as far as I'm concerned, is fighting. You're going in, you're putting a head guard on. If you haven't done sparring, you can't really understand what it's like. And I'm talking about the sparring that I done when I started was full contact. It wasn't light sparring. And when I went in, I tried to knock people out, because I was always terrified of getting beaten up and embarrassed, because it happened when I was younger. I got beaten up a few times. I got beaten up in a street fight. Someone bullied me outside of a local club. He pulled my hair, spat at me, punched me, kicked me. It was a really nasty bully, and I punched him back. And then everyone came outside of the club, and the organizer there was a bit nasty, and they basically, like, they orchestrated it so we had a one-on-one, and he beat me up. He was too strong for me. I was a kid, and I felt heartbroken. And then people were laughing at me and stuff. So that put so much depression in me. So that in my head as a kid, I always wanted to redeem myself and overcome that and erase that trauma. Later on, the guy that was bullying me, he didn't bully me no more. He beat me up, but he respected me because I fought back. So that kind of addressed itself. And it's years later, I forgave him and we moved on from that, right? But that's a big reason why I got into boxing, because it was that experience, getting beaten up in front of people. And bearing in mind, it wasn't just losing, it was that adults, which was a bit cruel. We were young kids, obviously, in our teens, even the guy that bullied me. But I had grown men laughing at me, which wasn't a nice thing to do, but that's life anyway. People can be horrible. So when I went down to Fitzroy Lodge, it would have been evident to them how socially nervous I was anyway. I was a shy person. I felt comfortable with the guy who brought me down, because I've just connected with him. He was a lovely guy. So they introduced me. I started training. They didn't let me do the sparring straight away. But when it came to sparring, I'll be honest with you guys, like, I was terrified. And I'm sorry to be crude, but this is the truth. Like, when the trainer said to me, right, he didn't tell me he was going to do this on the day, because I used to just go in there, do the circuit, hit the bag, hit the pads, do the shadow boxing. But I never went in and done the sparring. I would always observe it, and it always looked fun, but it always looked really rough. And I used to be thinking, I'd like to do it. I don't know if I can handle it. So he said to me on this particular day, he goes, "You're sparring today," and he goes, "and you're going to spar with him." And the guy that he pointed to was a guy that was big. I was scared of this guy. He looked mean. He was taller than me. He was a Polish guy, and I could physically see this guy can fight. And I'll be honest, deep down I was thinking, I'm not going to be able to beat him. He's going to beat me. And it's hard for my pride to admit that. I'm eager at the time. In my head, I was thinking, I don't want to fight this guy. He's going to beat me up. It's going to make me feel terrible. I'm trying to get over things in the past. So anyway, when he said that to me, I said, okay. And I remember all of a sudden, when I walked away, and because my trainer said to me, get your gum shield, get ready, warm up first. So when I was trying to warm up, I nearly got sick. I felt like I was gonna shit my pants. I needed to take a shit. Sorry, my language. I needed to go to the toilet, and I nearly got sick, and I felt I was gonna piss myself. So I wanted to piss, shit, and get sick at the same time. That's how frightened I was, guys. Ego aside, underneath, and that's how much it triggered my adrenaline. I didn't know my body was gonna react like that. Bearing in mind, obviously, I was 21 years of age. I never boxed before. I'd hit pads, hit bags. Now, prior to that, I'd been in a lot of street fights growing up, but that's a bit different. Street fighting can be scary in a different way. A lot of the fights that I had, like, they weren't planned. Like, someone would start and I'd fight back, and then all of a sudden, but this was planned, and I was scared because my anxiety, I was already nervous anyway. I'm thinking, oh no, what if I lose? What if I get tired? What if he knocks me out? What if I embarrass myself? What if they think I'm weak in the gym? I already had all that paranoia going on. So I remember in my head thinking, oh man, it's not easy to admit these things right at the time. I'm thinking, I just want to call my mum and say, Mum, please, Mum, rescue me. Mum, Dad, I don't want to do it. But I couldn't say no to the trainer. I could not embarrass myself. That's how I felt. So anyway, I get my gum shield, I get my head guard in, climb on the ropes. He's on the other side. The guy's just staring at me. He looks mean. He's bigger than me, and my legs have gone. My legs are shaking. I can't feel my legs. I can't speak. I don't want to look at the guy. The trainer's looking at me. I don't want to make eye contact. I'm terrified, absolutely scared to death, and I feel of course I feel ashamed. And he says, "Bell goes right, go." So when we come out to the centre, I couldn't move. It's like being in a dream where you're so scared. I'm thinking, I can't hurt the man. I'm too scared. So I couldn't throw much. Now he starts throwing at me. Now all of a sudden, fear's kicked in, my survival instincts, and now I try and knock him out. It's more coming from like it's coming from almost like a cowardly but a brave place. So I'm swinging handbags, trying to knock the guy out, and we're getting tangled, and the guy's pushing me off, and he's boxing me. He's winning me, but I'm trying. And then obviously the trainer says, "Stop!" He goes, "What the hell was that?" He shouts at me and says, "We don't do street fighting in here," because that's all I know. Street fighting, which is not boxing, it's different. So I'm knackered, I'm exhausted, and at this point, he tells me, "Stop for a second. If you do all that, I'm going to throw you out." And he tells me to obviously use my jab just to work and keep your hands up. Is what he said to me. He said, "Keep your hands up, or he's going to keep hitting you," because he kept hitting me. My head kept going back, and it hurt. So I tried, got to the end, came out, and I felt humiliated and ashamed. And in my head that day, I remember thinking, "It's over. I've got to quit. I've just humiliated myself." And the trainer's probably thinking, "This guy is terrible." So that day, to be fair though, the Polish guy that I sparred with, like, he was a gentleman. After he came up, like, and said, like, "Well done," banged my hand. I remember leaving that gym that night and thinking, I've got two choices from this day onwards. I can quit and never come back here again, and I'm going to have to live with that. It's going to kill me for the rest of my life, because I've already got things, I've got baggage already that I just told you guys about, that I'm still deep. I can't accept it. So if I add this as well, I'm gonna always be, in my mind, it'll be, I was a quitter, I was a coward, I wasn't a man. So I went back, And I kept going back, and that guy who got the better of me, he got the better of me for a while, but I don't know how long it took. But as bad as I was when I started, and I'll be honest, I was shit when I started. I was bad because I was coming from a street fighting background, and that didn't really, like, it doesn't work. It works a little bit, but not against someone who can box. A boxer will just time you, let you throw handbags, cover up, block, jab your head off, and hit you, do whatever he wants to you, play with you and hurt you and beat you and break you down. So I had to really learn that. I had to start again, learn the basics, put my ego aside, just learn how to throw a jab like that. Just a touch and cover up and block, parry, jab. So they told me start from the basics, and I started to get better. I got in with that guy a few months later, and I got the better of him. And I gave him a black eye, right? And then I became like, all the guys were lovely. We became like the respect between us. And then he'd get the better of me. I couldn't believe it. I come out of the gym one day. I nearly crying. Right, I was a very emotional guy, because the reason I was crying, not because I was weak, because I was so proud of myself that I went from that, how bad I was, getting beaten up, embarrassing myself, which I did. I'm not embarrassed now. I'm proud, but back then I did, to getting better, because I didn't quit and listening to the trainers, and then getting the better of someone who'd beat me up in sparring. Now, the next sparring session, the guy who brought me down to Fitzroy Lodge, he had a friend who at the time was 31 years of age, and I was only 21, so he's a lot older than me, bigger than me, and he said, go in with him. He was quite nice to me, and the trainer spoke to me. But when we got in the ring, to be honest, it was a bit of a bully. He was a bully in that way, because I thought he's obviously going to go lighter on me, because I was skinny back then, I weighed about 72 kilos at 6'1", so I was skinny for that height. I was like middleweight. The guy I got in with was bigger than me, and he was 10 years older, and he had a lot of experience as an amateur. I had some amateur fights already. I didn't have any fighting, loads of sparring. He beat the shit out of me. He battered me, and it hurt. Busted my nose, and gave me a black eye. My jaw was hurting, and in my head, I was feeling a bit sorry for myself, thinking I thought this guy was meant to go light on me, kind of show me the ropes. But I remember thinking in my head, like, you fucker, like, you fucking bully, you know what I mean? Like, you're meant to be kind of guiding me, and you're kind of taking advantage of me. You know I'm weaker than you. I mean, and you just beat the shit out of me. But like, okay, I don't mind taking a bit of beating, but you smashed my face up. I remember coming back, and I lived with my nan. My nan going, oh my God, what happened to your face? I was like, boxing. She's like, are you going to go back? I was like, yeah, I'm going back. I was going to quit again. I remember being on the train, coming back on the Bakerloo line, and looking at my face in the mirror and thinking, oh my God, like this is a tough sport. Do I want to do this? Came back. I would spar with this particular guy quite regularly, and he'd always get the better of me. Same thing happened with him. I started getting better because I'd been getting my confidence learning, and I got the better of him. And one session he didn't like it, and he actually said, like, well done. I was hitting him with uppercuts, so I got the better of him, right? Now, the reason why I'm telling this story, because when I was going through that at the time, I remember thinking sometimes, why am I doing this? I'm not getting paid. It hurts. You know, there's no guarantee I'm going to go on and be a world champion or a pro boxer, even though in my head I had dreams. But when I see where I am now, what boxing done for me, and what these amazing people done, the trainers and all the people I sparred, these people changed my life. Because the fear and the anxiety and the insecurities that I had to face about myself have helped me to do things in my life that I could never have done. Like, they've helped me so much, and that's why I've got such a huge respect for boxers, right? I wasn't a professional boxer, so I'm not going to sit here. I'm not trying to be anything that I'm not other than myself. But I boxed as an amateur. I had one fight, got beat, did loads of sparring, but overcome what I originally came to overcome something. I was trying to find myself, and I found myself through doing boxing. And it's crazy because the more I did it, the less that I wanted to have fights with people. And I didn't get into fights anymore around my area. From doing that, it stopped me from doing drugs, getting into crime, which I did get into. I dabbled in drugs and got in trouble a bit when I was younger. So the thing, it changes lives, it really does. And, I made friends, and you have such a respect. When you come out of the ring and you spar with someone, even if they beat you up or you get better, it's almost uncontrollable, the mutual respect that you have. So the confidence that it gave me, and obviously I went and boxed in other clubs and went on and actually had an amateur fight. I got beaten, But I'm glad I went through that. So it's given me so much strength and confidence, helped me to heal. And the fact that I can talk about it today is amazing, because I've never really spoken about this with anyone. I might have touched on it with friends. I've not really gone into details. So I just appreciate the opportunity, even if no one's listening or whatever people are going to think, that's fine. I feel good that I can get this out. And I know it will inspire a lot of you, because you'll get to know a bit more about me and the fact that I've had so many struggles growing up. It hasn't all been easy, just because you see me now in a good place, and you see some of the success that I've done and the channel and the people I've helped. I've same as you. I'm no different to anybody else, the struggles that I've had, but I didn't quit. And if I would have quit, there was many pivotal times that if I would have given up now, I wouldn't be the person I am, and it could have really held me back. So, the sparring, I can only speak for myself. I haven't done anything in my life that has been more frightening. I don't even think public speaking was frightening. Not for me, not as scary. Like asking a woman out, scary at times. Going doing interviews and stuff, but not as scary for me personally as doing the sparring. But obviously over time, the fear never went, but I got better at dealing with it. And I remember my mentor, Jeff Thompson, when he spoke about when he used to do martial art classes and teach people how to face fear, he would make people volunteer to spar. And initially, most people don't want to volunteer, and I never wanted to. But over time, after boxing for about a year, I went from a guy that used to hide in the club, go toilet. I didn't want to get picked for sparring because I was so scared of it, to someone that would come up and say, oh, "Can I spar today? And can I do an extra 2 rounds?" So that's what you can do when you put your mind to it, courage. So basically what I'm trying to say to people is, it doesn't matter if you feel terrible and scared at the start and you embarrass yourself. We all make mistakes. We can redeem ourselves. And I never knew that when I was younger, because I went through a lot of embarrassment and situations where I failed and people laughed at me. In those moments, as a young kid with a young mind, I used to think there's no hope for me. You can't, but you can, of course you can later on. Like, you can transform your life because you've gone through those things, not despite those things, but it depends on what's inside you. If you've got the determination and you've got the courage and the heart, which eventually I found out that I did. So, and even things like with dealing with, working through social anxiety and teaching, it's given me the confidence to go out and do these things as someone who's quite introverted to begin with and shy. And doing these videos now, when I think about it, it's easy. It's easy doing these videos, not to be like arrogant, because in comparison to the boxing, sparring and fighting, that was so fucking hard, so challenging at times when you're nervous. And I always used to feel that no one's more nervous than I am. Like, obviously everyone had fears, but that's how I felt about myself, whether that's true or not. I always used to look at it and think, how comes he don't look that nervous? I'm scared to death here. But once I would get in, and once I'd get into round 1, I'd get my confidence would start coming. And after doing it, when I had my amateur fight, I was sparring like twice a week consistently. You do get used to it. It gets easier. But then sometimes it's not easy, it gets hard, especially when you're going to get in with someone who's better than you. And that was good for me, because I sparred with lots of people that I was better than them, clearly. And I sparred with a lot of people that were much better than me and in between. And that's how you grow. You won't learn in life if you just mix with people that you're better than, that you're better than them. So it teaches you about life, it teaches you about discipline, respect, but most importantly, it really taught me about how to manage fear. How to act, how to communicate under extreme, stressful, frightening situations and circumstances. It really does give you like a measuring stick, like a point of reference. So whenever you have fear and anxiety in your life, you can go back to that point where you went through that. You can use that experience from the past and you can use it in the present. So amazing what I learned, and it's kind of crazy how. And this is why I think I've been able to help a lot of people on my 6 weeks program, because when they're scared and stuff, I know how to motivate and calm and talk to them, get through to them because of those experiences, right? That's it. That's what I wanted to share. And yeah, I'm still processing it. I sometimes sit down and just think, I'm so grateful that because not everybody gets the opportunity. Like, my life could have gone in a different direction. It was so many times where I weren't going to go to that gym. I was going to put it off. Because of fear, but luckily I didn't. And I was going to quit quite a few times, and luckily I didn't. I tried, I stuck it out. I wasn't good enough to go on and be a pro boxer, but that wasn't my calling in life. But it wasn't a waste. I was meant to do boxing to learn the lessons I've learned. And I never realized later on, when I had a mental breakdown, what was going to come to the rescue. Of course, boxing. And that's why I've been putting the videos out. That's why I've got such a passion, because of what it does for your mental health, your self-esteem. It's not everybody, and many boxers, not everybody that goes to a boxing gym that's going to be the next Mayweather or Ricky Hatton or Tyson Fury. Some people, like myself, go there to find themselves, to be better in life. So can't have said it any more better than that, all right, Phyllis?